everyone. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing His Excellency Ambassador Denis Francis, a seasoned diplomat from my own part of the world, Latin America and the Caribbean. He is the president of the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly. It is a pleasure to have you address this 11th Baku Forum, Ambassador Denis Francis. He has 40-year experience in the diplomatic service of Trinidad and Tobago. For 18 of those years of unbroken service, he held the rank of ambassador. According to Mr. Francis, he has the distinction of being his country's longest-serving ambassador. He was the Director of Multilateral Affairs, Senior Advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs on multilateral matters, including climate change and the negotiations of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Ambassador Francis was permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva, to the World Trade Organizations and the UN Human Rights Council, and ambassador to the United Nations in New York. He was accredited to the UN specialized agencies in Vienna and Rome, and accredited as ambassador to Austria and Italy. Ambassador Francis was also permanent delegate to UNESCO. In addition, Ambassador Francis had many important bilateral assignments to Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Cuba. He graduated from the School of Advanced International Studies at the Johns Hopkins University in Washington, D.C. Ambassador Francis has the very difficult and delicate task of leading the world of the UN most representative body, the Parliament of Nations, at times of great hardship, in times of mistrust, disinformation, and political confrontation. And he's leading the charge with extraordinary competence, diplomatic wisdom, and a clear sense of service to the cause of peace, equity, justice, human dignity, and environmental integrity. Without further ado, I now give the floor to His Excellency, the President of the UN General Assembly. And before I invite His Excellency to come to the podium, I have to say that he's in very good company. There are eight former UN presidents of the General Assembly just to escort His Excellency while he delivers his speech. Welcome to the podium, Ambassador Francis.
Your Excellency, Ms. Vaira Vic Friberger and Ms. Ismail Serajeldin, co-chairs of the Nizami Ganjavi International Center, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I should like to thank my predecessor, Her Excellency Maria Fernanda Espinosa, President of the UN General Assembly for the 73rd session, for her kind words of introduction and welcome to this exceptional assemblage of global thought leaders. I also wish to express my gratitude to the Nizami Ganjavi International Center, and in particular to its Secretary General, Mr. Rovshan Muradov, for the invitation to join you here today and to deliver a keynote address. And allow me the opportunity to commend His Excellency, Mr. Ilham Aliyev, the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, for his enduring commitment to promoting dialogue, tolerance, and multiculturalism, which of course provides the intellectual foundation for the convening of the Global Baku Forum for the 11th year. The sheer numbers of leaders, Nobel laureates, entrepreneurs, heads of international organizations, and other critical thinkers who gather here annually, motivated by the mission to advance broad, constructive dialogue on the complex challenges of our time, speaks volumes about the convening power of Nizami Ganjavi International Center in arranging this esteemed convocation. This year's theme, Fixing the Fractured World, is particularly noteworthy given the very apt manner in which it captures the essential challenge of our time. Indeed, as we aim to fix the fractured world, the International Center's ideals, those of the great poet Nizami Ganjavi, of learning, tolerance, dialogue, and understanding, should be at the very core of our collective toolkit and strategy to repair and indeed regain the effective balance and stability of our systems of global governance. Ladies and gentlemen, as conflicts multiply and tensions boil over across the world, our multilateral system has come under extraordinary and deepening strain, unlike anything we have seen in the past. It is fair to say that we are careening towards breaking point. Geopolitical fractures have damaged trust, eroded respect for international law, and risk widening into dangerous, irreversible chasms if left unaddressed. The United Nations General Assembly, often referred to as the Parliament of the world, has not been immune from these fissures. This is why I chose the four watchwords of peace, prosperity, progress, and sustainability for all to guide my presidency of the General Assembly. Peace, because it is the very foundation on which everything else is built, but which has become in short supply and is now the central focus of our work in the 78th session. When present, peace is the great enabler of a bright future, but when absent, it becomes the great destroyer of dreams and aspirations, and, unfortunate though it is, goodwill. Prosperity, because even though we live in a world of plenty, plenty is certainly not equally enjoyed. On the contrary, millions of people, especially women and children, are left out and left behind, languishing in multidimensional abject poverty. Progress, because we need it across the board, from realizing the Sustainable Development Goals and advancing gender equality to reforming the unjust financial architecture that discriminates against and unfairly disadvantages countries and communities in the global south, and which can no longer meet the sustainable development demands of a 21st century world. And sustainability, because all our efforts will be in vain if they cannot stand the test of time and the strains of human civilization to meet the needs of succeeding generations. While these priorities are broad, in the General Assembly, we are drilling down into each, convening formally and informally, strengthening relations across the principal organs of the United Nations, bringing diverse external voices into our deliberations, and demonstrating to one of our key constituencies, the public, that the United Nations has both the capacity and indeed the will to rethink its methods and to act as one. This is not by any means flashy, headline-grabbing work, but it is worthy and necessary to bring about innovations for member states and to fortify our collective efforts to mend unity of purpose as the only credible basis upon which to resolve the complex polycrises that currently confound us. Excellencies, mend we must from the systematic denial of the fundamental rights of women and girls in Afghanistan to the cascade of military coups across West Africa, the flagrant wartime commission of violation of international human rights law and international humanitarian law in Ukraine and in Gaza, and in rampant gang violence that has descended anarchy upon the streets of Haiti. World events are pushing the multilateral system to the brink in ways not seen in decades. Perhaps no two major conflicts capture this grim reality more viscerally than the aggression against Ukraine and the devastating escalation of violence in the Middle East, in Gaza, sparked by the attack on the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of a UN member state. Regrettably, the war against Ukraine has entered its third bloody year. The targeting of homes, schools, hospitals, ports, and historic cultural sites, and regular bombardment of power and water infrastructure have not only brought horrific suffering and destruction to Ukraine, but unleashed energy and food crises across the globe, leaving millions bereft of vital services and resources they acutely need to survive. In Gaza, the unbearable humanitarian catastrophe continues to worsen amid searing accounts of preventable civilian deaths from famine, exposure, disease, or the shocking misfortune of being caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. The staggering death toll of over 31,000 civilian lives lost since October 7th stands as a stark reminder of the unthinkable horrors of this senseless war and demands that we redouble our efforts towards peace, including compelling urgency of finding a formula to agree, at least, to an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. Dear friends, in both cases, the Security Council, which bears primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security, has failed to discharge its duty to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. In those circumstances, eager to act to save lives, member states have frequently turned to the General Assembly to lead in condemning the assault on peace and on the Charter, as well as demanding compliance with international law. The Assembly's response has been characterized by both alacrity and ambition, convening emergency special sessions that have yielded clear and decisive outcomes. In the case of Ukraine, the Assembly has to date adopted 6 resolutions since March 2022, condemning the aggression, demanding that the Russian Federation withdraw all its forces from the territory of Ukraine, and calling for respect for international humanitarian law and the establishment of accountability mechanisms. In the case of Gaza, it was unequivocally demanded an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and urgently called on all parties to uphold international law, to protect civilians, release all hostages unconditionally, and to ensure the unimpeded access of life-saving humanitarian aid. To be clear, the Assembly demands represent the compelling will of the international community, and I reassert them here forcefully without reservation. Excellencies, dear colleagues, As global leaders, I implore you to use your influence and your vast networks to help in giving life to these critical demands that constitute the conscience of humanity. I should like to acknowledge among us here today 7 of my predecessors whose support for the role and effectiveness of the office of President of the General Assembly has never dwindled and has accordingly been a source of great encouragement to me. I also would like to recognize the government of Azerbaijan for its exceptional contributions to building a more effective multilateralism as the successful chair of the non-aligned movement over the last 5 years. Azerbaijan's achievements in founding the NAM Youth Organization, the NAM Women's Platform, and the NAM Parliamentary Network in particular reflect the desired, inspired leadership necessary to positively shape global relations for years to come. And the entire General Assembly stands behind me in enthusiastically welcoming the resumption of negotiations, the latest meetings of the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia in Munich, followed by the foreign ministers' meeting in Berlin. I commend the leadership of both countries for making strides to foster peace and security, and express the Assembly's hope for further progress towards a durable peace codified in a peace treaty in line with the norms and principles of international law. Excellencies, our ability to usher in a more just and equitable future will hinge on how well we repair the damage inflicted by the divisive dynamics scarring our politics and societies today. There are several opportunities to harness just that in 2024. A critical moment will arrive in September with the Summit of the Future, where world leaders are expected to forge a new global consensus on how to strengthen the multilateral system, fast-tracking the SDGs, redressing governance gaps, and importantly, holding member states more accountable to their commitments. The summit will serve not as an endpoint, but rather as a catalyst for transformation across the UN system and across the sustainable development paradigm. I encourage governments not only to participate actively and constructively, but to recognize its significance as an opportune moment to prioritize compromise in the interest of the international community as a whole over narrow national interest. As President of the General Assembly, I will continue to do my utmost to support achieving a robust Pact of the Future, and, if intergovernmentally agreed, a global digital compact and a declaration on future generations as the summit's anticipated outcomes in September. This includes hosting the General Assembly's first ever Sustainability Week from the 15th to the 19th of April in New York as an important stepping stone on the path to September. The week will feature a series of high-level events emphasizing sustainability in infrastructure, tourism, energy, and transport, as well as my flagship event on debt sustainability as a major systemic inhibitor of sustainable development to many countries in the South. Another significant opportunity to promote unity will be COP29 here in Baku. In this regard, the announced commitment to support Mission 1.5 degrees centigrade by the troika of COP presidencies, that is, the United Arab Emirates, Azerbaijan, and Brazil, is precisely the type of leadership we need to spark transformation. In this context, I am pleased that the General Assembly in February authorize the UN Office of Disaster Risk Reduction and the UN Office for Project Services to co-host the Loss and Damage Fund Secretariat. This represents a significant milestone. It is my fervent hope that COP29 will motivate the fund's continued capitalization, including through pledges similar to those made during COP28 presidency by Germany, the UAE, and others. We all look toward COP29 to deliver a series of ambitious climate action commitments, as well as to strengthen the path to the 1.5-degree target and to accelerate adaptation measures and financing to support frontline communities. To succeed, given the times in which we are living, it must be said explicitly that we must staunchly commit to upholding and defending fundamental human rights and gender equality. For both strategic and practical reasons, we must equally empower young people to speak up and to speak out on issues that will ultimately affect their future. I applaud the Global Baku Forum for including the Youth Speak, We Listen event in its program, and I eagerly await the outcomes of its session tomorrow. Excellencies, Nizami Ganjavi himself reminds us that, and I quote, "What we are and what we possess is but a loan. We all share a duty. It is a duty of hope about the future and of optimism for what we can achieve working together in common cause. A duty to walk this wondrous planet with light feet and an opened mind, awake to the reality that peace will enable the ambitious outcomes we seek, and that human dignity is inherent in us all. So many observers have sounded the death knell at the UN's door, yet humanity's resolve and collective commitment to the principles and purposes of the UN Charter have always prevailed. As someone who prefers action to inertia, I, for one, am restless. I urge you to be restless as well, but eager to contribute to the search for solutions to the myriad of challenges confronting us, and to challenge governments, domestic audiences, the media, advisors, and your mindsets to ensure that the Pact of the Future lives up to its name and that COP29 is known for the transformations we need to bring about a truly just transition and a more resilient tomorrow. To prioritize informed collective action over narrow national interest. To foster sustainable peace in Ukraine, the Middle East, and indeed across the world. To recommit to champion all efforts in this direction, and to keep my door open to any and all who seek constructive dialogue. Allow me to end, once again, by expressing my appreciation to the government and people of Azerbaijan for the hospitality extended to me and my delegation, and to thank you all for the opportunity to join this important conversation. I thank you.